We're going to factor trinomials with lead term x squared. So in other words, we're going to be looking at trinomials, three terms, that have a lead coefficient of 1. For example, we're going to start with the trinomial x squared plus 9x plus 18. Because this is a trinomial, our goal is to factor it into a product of two binomials. What we're doing is to rewrite this using FOIL. So we're really going to be undoing FOIL. So when we do FOIL, we do first, outer, inner, last. When we multiply the first two terms together of our two binomials, we're going to get the first term of our answer. When we multiply the last two terms together in that binomial, we're going to get that number at the end, the 18. And when we multiply together the outer and inner terms, we're going to end up combining like terms to get this 9x, outer plus inner. So when we're factoring, we're really just undoing FOIL. We want to rewrite this trinomial as a product of two binomials. So here's how we tackle it. I go ahead and start with the x squared first. I know that that x squared has to come from this first term times that first term. Well, to get x squared, I need x times x. So x times x. So I've got x squared guaranteed. I don't do the outer plus inner because that's going to be a combination of two different terms. Next I look at the 18. So what I need are two numbers here that multiply to be 18. So I need a pair of numbers that multiplies to be 18. But those two numbers are also going to give me the outer and inner terms coefficients. So I need that same pair of numbers to add up to be 9, and that's for the 9x. So as we're comparing this to FOIL, I need the last term to be 18, so the pair of numbers needs to multiply. This times this is 18, and the outer and the inner, outer plus inner, is going to have this number as a coefficient plus this number as a coefficient. So I want those to add to 9. So we start running through our choices. So 18 is 1 times 18, but that adds to 19, so certainly not a choice. We can also think of that as 2 times 9, but if I add those together, 2 plus 9, I'll write it again, 2 plus 9 is 11. We wanted 9, so that pair won't work either. Well, how about 3 times 6? So 3 times 6, if I add those together, 3 plus 6, those are 9. So the pair of numbers I'm looking for are a 3 and a 6, both positive. So I'm going to write down the plus 3 here and the plus 6 there. What I have right here, I'm going to put a box around it. What I have right here is my answer. My goal was a factorization, which is a multiplication. So that's my answer, but I'm going to go down below here and check my answer. Factoring undoes multiplication. So I should be able to take my answer, x plus 3, x plus 6, multiply it out, and get right back to my original polynomial. So we'll just check. X times x, that's x squared. That's my first term. Outer is x times 6, so plus 6x. Inner is x times 3, so plus 3x. And then last is 3 times 6, which is 18. I'm going to combine those like terms. See how those are my outer plus my inner terms? I combine those. X squared plus 9x plus 18. That's exactly what I was attempting to factor. So I can check it by multiplying it back through. Now if you look at what we've done, I can really simplify my work here. I already knew that the 3 times the 6 was going to be the 18. All of the numbers that I started with here were going to be the 18. So I can really simplify my work by just checking the middle term. So you'll see me do that as I go through some examples. I will only be checking that middle term, just to make my life a little quicker. You can check the whole thing though. Let's do another example. For our second example, let's look at x squared plus 8x minus 20. This one has a negative sign at the end, so we need to be just a little more careful as we're choosing our pairs of numbers. First of all, it's a trinomial, so I'm going to set up a product of two binomials. And with those two binomials, bi for two terms, I've got two terms in the first set of parentheses and two terms in the second set of parentheses. And again, I've got my orange pen, so I'll label them. That's first. This 8x is the outer plus the inner, so that's a combination of two terms. And the negative 20 is my last term. The easiest one to deal with is the x squared. So I'm going to deal with that first. To multiply this times this and get x squared, I need x times x. I've already guaranteed that I'm going to get an x squared. Now I want to work for that negative 20. So I want these to multiply to be negative 20, and I want them to add, because this is the outer plus the inner, I want them to add to be 8. So 8 is that coefficient on the middle term. Okay, so as you get good at this, you don't need the whole table. But as you're starting, you might want to just write down some numbers in the table and see if you can get your two numbers that multiply to be negative 20 to get to 8. The more you practice these, the quicker you'll be at coming up with the right pair first. Let's start with negative 4 times 5. That's a pair. But negative 4 plus 5 is 1 and not 8. We also could have done negative 5 times 4. I'm not going to get anywhere. Negative 5 plus 4, that's just going to give me a negative 1 instead. So that won't work either. Negative 20. 20 is also 2 times 10. So how about negative 2 times 10? That gives me negative 20. I'm going to do negative 2 plus 10. Negative 2 plus 10 is 8. That's what I wanted because that's going to be the sum of the outer and the inner coefficients. That's going to give me 8. So yes, the pair of numbers I want are the negative 2 and the 10. The order here doesn't matter because I can write these set of parentheses since they're being multiplied in either order. I could switch them around and write them in the reverse order. But I'm going to just write them in the order that I have them here. It's a negative 2 and a positive 10. So what I was saying there a second ago was that you could also have written it as x plus 10, x minus 2, and you'd still be correct. So either one of these is correct. If I want to do my check, I don't need, that's my answer, I don't need to check the whole thing. I already picked the 2 and the 10 that I knew were going to be the 20, negative 20, and I had already started with an x and an x that I knew were going to be that x squared. So I can just check, to simplify my life, the outer plus the inner. So if I'm checking the outer plus the inner, I'm going to check the outer is 10x, that inner is a negative 2x, and there's the 8x. That was the hard one. That's what was the hard one to come up with, the 8x, but that matches my middle term. So a quick way to check is to just check the middle term. Of course, you could multiply the whole thing out. Let's do one more. So the last one for this group, we're going to look at one really similar to our previous example. We're going to look at x squared minus 5x minus 24. Again, it's a trinomial, so I set up my product of two binomials, and I'm going to grab my orange pen here. This is first, outer plus inner, and last. I'm going to set up I call this my template. So I'm going to set up my spaces there, and like I've been doing with the last example, start with x squared. That's going to be first times first, which is x times x. Okay, now I need to do my work here. So I need to be able to multiply to get to negative 24. So multiply to get to a negative 24. And I need to add, for the outer plus the inner, I need to add those to get to a negative 5. Lots of things you can try here. Negative 2 times 12. Negative 2 plus 12, though, is 10. So that one won't work. Let's see, 6 times 4. So negative 4 times 6 is negative 4 plus 6. but that gives me 2, also no. Even if I switched the order, I'd go negative 6 times 4. Negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2, so that's not going to work either. What I really need here is, I think, a 3 and an 8. So if I switch to a 3 and an 8, I want the 5 to be negative. So let's think ahead a little bit. If I want the 5 to be negative, I need to not have the 3 be negative, but the 8 be negative. So rather than going through all my possible choices, I really want to think what choice will work for my outer and the inner to get that to be a negative 5. Negative 8 plus 3. Negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. That's my choice. I'll put a no next to that one. Remember, on these the order doesn't matter. So I can put negative 8 here and then plus 3 here, or I could have switched their order. This is my answer. I'm going to do a quick check here down below. As I'm checking that, I'm just going to check the middle. I know that negative 8 and 3, their product is negative 24, so I've got that one. The x times the x is where I started, so I've got that one. Let's just check the outer plus the inner. Okay, outer is going to be x times 3, so 3x. Inner is the minus 8 times x, so negative 8x, and 3 minus 8x's is negative 5x, and that checks that middle term. So the answer to that factorization is x minus 8 times x plus 3.